Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. Welcome to the continuation of my annual Tier 1 Music Festival. I'm going to delve through a bunch of albums really quick, 48 to be exact. And these albums will represent the foundation for all the music we listen to going forward throughout the rest of the year. That will eventually produce the top 20 and eventually the album of the year. This particular post is special because all the other posts I've done so far have been kind of stuck together by some very loose musical similarities. The thing that connects these albums is that all these albums were suggested by my viewership. Being a Patreon member to my channel gives you the privilege of being able to add an album to the rotations for 2025. And this is a really great thing for me because as much as I go and watch music channels and read critics, the best suggestions are always ones that are brought to you by your friends, people that you hold in high regard, that you value their musical opinions, and that know you. So I'm really excited about these, and all these albums are by artists I have no familiarity with. I don't have any background information on them beforehand. They're coming in totally cold. And it's been really great to kind of get exposed to things that I just wasn't chasing them down right now. So let's go and get started with Clutch's Blast Tyrant. Now, of the artists that are on this post, Clutch is actually one of the ones that I've heard of before. Now, I've never heard any of their music, at least not intentionally. And objectively speaking, it's a pretty straight-ahead rock album. Its instrumental side, I think you can kind of trace back to a degree to the sounds of late and heavy grunge like Soundgarden and the rhythm section aspects of Rage Against the Machine. But the thing that really distinguishes them from those projects, I think, is two things. First of all, the vocalist. The vocals on this album have a real kind of blues-influenced gut bucket feel to them. And that certainly distinguishes them from, the distinctive vocals of Chris Cornell or maybe the sort of hip-hop angle that Rage Against the Machine took with their stuff. They're pretty well known for their use of humor in their music, but their humor that they use is, as one critic I read called it, almost like a secret handshake. It's not obvious, but if you listen for how they use the words and they use kind of turns of phrases and wordplay in their songs, it's really pretty clever, but it also never breaks character. It still feels like a very straightforward, blues-influenced hard rock album, but with a very clever undercurrent to it that shows up with the lyrics. Okay, next up I got the self-titled recent album from Restorations. One of the things that came up in our last conversation, our roundtable review, was the problems that arise when you start really trying to hone in on genre. When you start talking about genre, it feels like you're talking about something very specific, but the closer you look at specific examples of genre, it gets more and more complicated. You clearly see very quickly that the idea that there are different kinds of genres that are separated gets really problematic, gets real tricky. But genres give us a language to talk about a style of music in a very general sense. And so that all being said, I would identify Restorations, what little I've heard from them so far, as a post-punk band. Now, how to define post-punk? That's a great question, but for me, it's about having a frame for it. Restorations gives me the feeling of Fugazi, and that's the group I sort of use as a reference for what post-punk is. And what I really noticed the most about Foundations, especially when I started listening to it against other things, is how big the production is. Like, you really feel like the bass drum in this album is in your head. You're sitting inside of the bass drum as you're listening to it. And that gives it recording a huge amount of power and a huge amount of energy. And again, not unlike Clutch, it's a very straightforward approach to songwriting. So they're not trying to, write Hey Jude every day. It's a very emotive and no frills type of songwriting.
All the answers to say no. The quiet is so loud when you open your mouth. Take all the answers to say go. Now you don't hear nothing this time.
Okay, next up I got London Grammar's The Greatest Love. This album was suggested by a longtime friend of mine and longtime supporter of the channel, Snoopy's, my friend Brent. And he's a really big fan of London Grammar. He's suggested a couple of albums to me in the past, and I do really enjoy London Grammar. A lot of the albums that I've heard from them in the past have really filled a spot in my listening that I don't chase down any other way. They've also not ever quite stuck with me as much, and I think it's mainly because I just have never quite gotten it. They present themselves as a trio, a guitarist and a keyboardist and a vocalist. So the minimalist minimalist approach that they've always taken that kind of, I think defines them is a consequence of that instrumentation. They do add some sparse rhythm section components to it. You'll hear some drums here and there, but really they stick to that arrangement. And with that in mind, I think they get a whole lot of mileage just as far as the atmospheres go. And on top of that, the vocalist for this band is fantastic. She's got this beautiful, distinctive, rich alto voice that really matches the timbre of the group overall in a really, really profoundly integrated way. And London Grammar is very consistent with this vibe that they produce. The album across from beginning to end is very consistent in its tone, and it matches many of their other albums. They really hone in and stick to this ambience that they've got, almost maybe to a fault. But they are so good at it, and it's so evocative. It feels like it just paints a picture of like driving on a highway in a downtown city at night, right whenever it feels like the night is totally still.
We might be apart, and in my deepest self-reflection, build a city, stay forever young, forever young. This is my place, my house, my rules. This is my place, my house, my rules.
And finally, I got Noah Kahan's Stick Season. One of the things I do really enjoy too about getting listener suggestions, they kind of break me out of the ways that my listening drifts from one way to the other. There was a time in like 2008, 2009 that I was listening to a lot of Fleet Foxes, listening to Band of Horses, a lot of sort of folk influenced indie rock stuff. And Noah Kahan really fits quite nicely into that paradigm, that angle of listening that I have, and I haven't really thought about that very much. Also at the same time, Noah Kahan has a slightly kind of bluegrassy approach. There's banjos and some mandolins and instrumentation like that can kind of tie into the bluegrassy feel that I was getting into with Nickel Creek last year. So this particular album is kind of a good nexus for some older stuff that I was listening to, but also attaches to recent listening. Again, you'll hear this on the basis of its songwriting. The thing that this album really hangs its hat on is fantastic, well thought out songs, sometimes bare bones, always arranged very, very intentionally and in a way that gets the most mileage out of all the material in the songs. Again, lyrically, this is an album too that has a lot going on with it. Although I'm not a huge lyrics person, there's all these little things that have been popping out of me that makes me go, what is that one about? What is this song about? So it has enough of that draw that's going to make me want to dive in deeper to those lyrics and figure out how they relate to the songs.
Rush of my blood, I'm 17 again. I am not scared of death, I've got dreams again. It's just me in the curve of the valley, and there is me.
And that's all I got for you guys at this time around. So again, thank you so much for my viewers, my Patreon subscribers, for putting these albums in. They're going to be put in just like all the other albums in here to be viewed as the best albums for 2025, looking at the end of the year. So if you want to follow all that, please like and subscribe, share the video out with your friends. Also follow me over on Spotify. All these songs are going up in a big playlist. Please check that out. And if you want to be involved in my Patreon list and you'd like to suggest an album for the 2025 showdowns, please sign up for my Patreon below. And until you see you next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.